The ship comes out of warp in silence. No Indians roar. No alarms se scream. Just a slow, groaning shudder as the stars stretch back into place. And there it is. A fortress world the size of a moon, its surface stitched with black towers and burning red skies, growing larger in the viewport with every second. Inside a holding pod barely wide enough to stand in, a young woman sits with her wrists bound in cold metal. Her name is Mira. She doesn't look away from the window. She doesn't blink. 3 months ago, Earth was still fighting. The narrator says, voice low, unhurried, almost gentle, the kind of calm that makes you brace for what's coming. 3 months ago, humanity still believed it could win. Flashes, fast and merciless. Earth's last fleet lighting up the dark like dying stars. A room full of exhausted diplomats, hands shaking as they sign a surrender no one wanted to sign. A voice reading names off a list, flat, mechanical, final. Tributes, the narrator continues. That's what the Dominion called them. A price paid in people, so the rest of Earth could keep breathing. The list goes on. Soldiers, scientists, children even, and at the very bottom, almost like an afterthought, Mira Solon. She doesn't cry when they call her name. She doesn't beg. She simply stands, and something in the way she does it, steady, unblinking, unreadable, makes the officer reading the list pause for half a second too long before moving on. Now, back in the present. The pod hums as it begins its final descent. Outside the door, 2 guards speak in a language she doesn't understand, but the subtitles do it for us. That's the human they're sending to him. She won't last the night. They never do. The door hisses open. Cold air floods in, thin, sharp, wrong. Not Earth's air. Alien air from an alien world, breathed by things that were never meant to share a sky with humans. And then, a shadow. Massive. Impossibly tall. It moves across the light, spilling into the pod, swallowing a hole. And for 1 full second, Mira finally stops breathing. The frame freezes right there, her foot barely lifting off the pod floor, the shadow looming just out of frame. Cut to black. They told her she was being sent to die. The narrator says quiet now, almost a whisper. A beat. Then, sharper, a warning wrapped inside a promise. They had no idea what they were about to unleash. The narrator's voice returns, quieter now, like someone leaning in to tell a secret. To understand why Mira didn't scream, you have to understand what she'd already survived. Flashback. Not to war this time, but to who she was before it. A cramped field hospital on the edge of a dying city. Mira, younger, hands soaked in someone else's blood, working fast, steady, calm even as the walls shake from impact. She wasn't a soldier. She was training to save the ones soldiers left behind. She was never meant to be a hero. She was meant to patch them up and send them back out. Then the war ended, not with victory, but with silence. And silence, the narrator says, is so much worse. Back to the present. Mira is marched through corridors carved from black stone, ceilings so high they swallow sound. Alien nobles line the halls, tall, armored, wolf-eyed things that don't bother whispering. That's the one for the king's chamber, one mutters, not caring if she understands. Waste of a good meal, another replies, and laughter follows her like smoke. She doesn't flinch, doesn't look at them. Her eyes stay forward, locked on the massive door at the end of the hall, a door built for something far larger than any human. A guard stops her before it, and for the first time, something almost like pity crosses his face. Advice, he says, voice low. Don't look him in the eyes. Don't speak unless he speaks first. The last tribute, who forgot that rule? He doesn't finish the sentence. He doesn't need to. The narrator's voice returns, heavier now. Every tribute before her had followed those rules perfectly, and every one of them had disappeared by morning. The doors begin to open, slow, groaning, ancient. Darkness pools out from the gap like something alive. So Mira made a decision. If the rules had never once saved anyone, she wasn't going to follow them either. Mira doesn't run, doesn't hide. Every instinct from years of field medicine kicks in. Instincts built for chaos, not comfort. She had spent her whole life patching people up in the middle of disaster, the narrator says. This was just disaster with worse lighting. She grabs a fallen shard of broken armor and hurls it. Not to kill, just to distract, buying Threxus the half-second he needs to turn the tide. Then she spots it, a support beam weakened by the earlier explosion, hanging right above two of the attackers. "Move left," she shouts. Threxus doesn't question it. He simply obeys, a king taking an order from a tribute for the first time in his life. The beam collapses, taking two attackers down with it. The fight ends fast after that. The remaining traitors flee or fall. Threxus stands in the wreckage, breathing hard, staring at the human who, by every tradition he's ever known, should have been hiding under a table, not helping him win. He realized something in that moment. The narrator says, Earth hadn't sent him a broken gift to be discarded. They had sent him something far more dangerous, someone unafraid. Mira kneels beside a wounded guard instead of celebrating, pressing a cloth to his bleeding side without being asked. Threxus watches her work in silence. "You could have hidden," he finally says. "Tributes always hide." "I wasn't given a choice about being here," she replies, not looking up. "But I still get to choose who I am while I'm here." For the first time, the narrator says, Threxus didn't see a tribute standing in his chamber. He saw someone Earth never should have been foolish enough to give away. But peace never lasts long in the Dominion. The next morning, a formal summons arrives, sealed, ancient, absolute. The full council demands Threxus perform the traditional claiming ceremony in front of the entire court, the ritual that marks a tribute as property forever. Tradition, the narrator says, has never once cared about what a king actually wants. Threxus stares at the summons a long time before speaking. "They expect me to kneel her before the entire court," he says quietly. "As property." Mira meets his eyes, unflinching, the same as she did the night they met. "Let them expect it," she says. "The throne room has never been this full." Every noble house of the Dominion stands crowded along the black stone walls, silent, watching. This is the ceremony they've seen 100 times before, a king asserting ownership over a tribute, cementing dominance for all to witness. They expect nothing different today. They came to watch a human kneel, the narrator says softly. They had no idea they were about to watch history change instead. Mira walks the long aisle alone, spine straight, chin level, the same steady walk she wore the night she stepped off that transport ship, believing she might die before morning. Only now, every eye in the room is on her. Not with pity, but something closer to disbelief. Threxus waits at the end of the hall, standing before his throne. Not seated, standing, as if some part of him already knows the old rules no longer fit what he's feeling. Tradition says the king raises his hand, the narrator says, and the tribute lowers her head. It has never once happened differently. Not in 300 years. Mira stops before him, close enough to hear him breathe, close enough that the whole court leans in, waiting for the hand to rise. It doesn't. Instead, Threxus looks at her the way he did that first night, like he's still trying to understand what she is and has slowly stopped wanting an answer, only more time to keep asking the question. "You saved my life," he says quiet at first, then louder, so the entire hall can hear it. "You looked at me without fear when everyone else in this room only ever offers me obedience." Gasps ripple through the court. No one interrupts a king mid-ceremony. No one dares. "I was told to claim you," he says, stepping closer. "But you were never something to claim." And then, in front of 300 years of tradition, in front of a court that has never once seen him bend for anyone, Threxus kneels. The sound that follows isn't a gasp. It's silence, the kind so absolute it feels like the whole fortress is holding its breath. No Dominion king had ever knelt before another living soul, the narrator says, voice barely above a whisper now. Not to an enemy, not to a rival, not even to the gods his people once worshipped. Mira looks down at him, and for the first time since that transport ship dropped out of warp, something in her chest loosens, like she's finally allowed to stop holding her breath too. "You didn't have to do that," she says softly. "I know," he answers, eyes never leaving hers. "That's exactly why I did." He rises slowly, taking her hand, not as a king taking property, but as something far simpler, far rarer in a place built on power and fear. Let it be known, he announces to the court, voice steady, final, that she stands beside me, not beneath me. Any who challenge that challenge me. They sent her to die, the narrator says, one last time, as the throne room finally erupts in a stunned, uncertain silence. Instead, she taught an empire what humanity actually was, and made a king fall in love with the one thing he never expected to find in a girl he was told to fear. The camera lingers on their hands, still joined, as the court slowly, one house at a time, begins to kneel too. The throne room empties slowly, nobles filing out and stunned, murmuring clusters, still trying to understand what they just witnessed. But Threxus doesn't stay to watch them go. Power doesn't often get quiet moments, the narrator says. But even kings need somewhere to breathe. He leads Mira up a narrow stairwell she hasn't seen before, one that winds past the noise of the fortress entirely, opening onto a balcony overlooking the alien world below, twin moons rising over black spires, a sky bruised purple and gold. Neither of them speaks for a long moment. The wind is cold, the same wind that greeted her the night she arrived believing it might be the last thing she ever felt. You're not what I expected when they told me Earth was sending tribute, Threxus finally says. You're not what I expected either, Mira admits. They told me you were a monster. I am, he says simply, just not to you. She almost smiles at that, the first real one since the transport ship. So what happens now? She asks. I doubt your council is thrilled about tonight. No, he agrees. But councils change. Empires change. It usually just takes someone brave enough or stubborn enough to start it. Which one am I? She asks. Both, he says, and this time, there's something almost like warmth in his voice. That's what worries me most. The narrator returns one final time, gentle now, closing the story the way it began, quietly, but with everything changed. She was sent as payment for a war Earth had already lost. But somewhere between fear and firelight, she became something no treaty could put a price on. Below them, the fortress lights flicker on across the alien city, and for the first time since she stepped off that ship, Mira doesn't feel like a prisoner in a world that was never meant for her. She feels like she's exactly where she's supposed to be. And the king who once knelt before an empire that feared him, the narrator finishes, now stood quietly beside the one person in the galaxy he never had to.